Hello and welcome back to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and audio fiction. This is the Miraculous fairy tale series, Secrets Under the Moon, and this is chapter 8. So if you haven't listened to all the other chapters, I recommend going and listening to them first. They are linked down below. A massive shout out to Arcataza for her commissioned artwork in the thumbnail, which is absolutely stunning, and make sure you go and send her some love. Make sure you send me some love by smashing that like button. Comment down below what you think of it and what will happen next, and make sure you subscribe, because if you got to chapter 8, what are you waiting for? Because there's this series and so many other one-shots and so many goodies to come. So I hope you enjoy. Chapter 8. Cat felt helpless as he watched his love run away from him, standing in the center of the empty room, the stars shining above him whilst the discarded picnic lay at his feet. He had gotten so close. The look in her eyes. He knew that look. She was trusting him again, opening up to him. "I'm sorry. I can't." The fear, the stress in her voice. What had caused her to panic like that? For a brief moment, he had forgotten about the mask permanently fixed on his face and body. They had simply been Adrian and Marinette, lost in their own world as he whispered the story into her ear. His heart cried out for that again, to have her back. It was a torture unlike he'd known before. He had debated about chasing after her, pleading for her to stay, to give this a chance, and what she had said. Was she honestly remembering them? Their time together? Against all odds, she was breaking through the curse. But then again, the look which shifted across her face went from endearing to scared. Genuine fear. If that had been the case, then why had the thought of kissing him driven her out of the building? Away from him? Of course it did. Look at him. He was hideous. He was a beast. Placing his clawed hands to his face, catching at his whiskers, making his nose twitch. And yet again, she knew this was a man underneath all this. Would that be enough to open her heart? Oh, what was he meant to do now? Knowing Marinette, she needed time, and he could understand that. To have this suddenly thrust upon you, a catman, magic, a curse. But she also tended to leap to denial, to bury the images and thoughts deep in her mind, so that she didn't need to focus on them. However, if there was a chance she was remembering, wasn't this when he encouraged her to keep pushing through? He growled as a rage coursed through his entire body, from claws down to his tail. How could she ever learn to love a beast, to love what he'd become? He needed to leave before the desire to tear this romantic starlit space from existence became too much. Plague would make sure the healthy cash donation would include a cleanup, but not the amount the damage he wanted to do this second. He tore through the doors, down the corridor, until he felt the February chilly wind wash across his face. The ache to run coursed through his muscles. He leapt from one ledge to another, until he found himself back in the shadows of the rooftops. This is where he belonged now, not fooling himself with the possibility of romance. He had been wondering lately what it would be like when the true transformation took place, when Felix won. Then he remembered what Marinette had said to him about Felix visiting her for the past year at the bakery. Why hadn't that occurred to him, that his slimy brother would try to befriend Marinette, weasel his way back into her life? And yet there was hope. Even with their shared faces, money and position of power, that hadn't won her over. Cat growled, the power surging through his limbs as he gave into the urge to be on all fours. The mere thought of that evil, backstabbing brother anywhere near his princess was too much to bear. Was all this really been about Felix's hidden obsession over her? He had used her as a weapon against Kat to torment him, to take away what he had held dear, believing the majority had been jealousy of Adrian with their father. The position and the attention he had caused endless fights, but nothing compared to the one they had over Marinette, to the point they had stopped speaking. Felix and she had met first, granted, had become friends for a few weeks until Adrian had bumped into them both in the park the summer before high school. That had been 8 years ago now, but she still caused his heart to pound in his chest as a shy smile caused her lips to curl in a certain way in the corner of her mouth, or how her ocean eyes could go from a still, calm current to a stormy sea in seconds, feeling the waves of emotion wash over him to the point of drowning. He had known the moment the heavens had opened, and he happily gave his umbrella to her. He had fallen without a parachute. His heart and soul had exploded like a clap of thunder inside of him. That night, Felix had cornered him in their library and claimed Marinette as his own. Adrian knew there was something rooted in his brother's feelings that wasn't warm, but Adrian had brushed off the notion to Felix being, well, himself. And yet, as the school year began, they were drawn to each other. Friends for the first 2 years, until he couldn't hold back any longer and had to ask her out on a date. As Adrian and Marinette became closer, to the point of inseparable, Felix had focused his attention to the spoiled brat that was Chloe and Marinette's bully, inflicting pain instead of friendship, hatred instead of love. Why hadn't he seen this earlier? Was it really true, that saying, can't see the forest for the trees? He had been blind to what his brother was capable of, to the difference in him after his travels. Was he so in love with Marinette that nothing else around him mattered? All he wanted to do was live in the beautiful world they had created together, unaware of the dangers around them. But all this due to revenge, and for what? Prove that he could inflict unsurmountable pain before completely removing his brother for good? The magic had erased Adrian from the past and present, but he hadn't changed it. And by doing so, Marinette had described a void in her, of being lost and confused without him. He hated this was happening to her. He wanted to protect her, but even at that he had failed. By living his days in the darkness, Felix had taken advantage of the light. Kat couldn't breathe. Somehow he had found himself at his usual spot opposite Marinette's balcony. But he couldn't. He wouldn't visit her. And yet the boiling rage surged inside of him to the point he cried out in utter despair. The dream hung around inside Marinette's mind like it was haunting her in every thought and task that needed to be completed. It had seemed so real to the point it was more like a memory than a dream. But how could it be? When it was time for Felix to arrive for his order, she was unable to look at him in the face, the same one that was now seared into her mind. She blamed it on the dress she was creating and the early start. She blamed it on everything but the truth. And yet, what was the truth anymore? What was real and what was now magic? How can this now man, who was once her friend before siding with a bully for years, was now her friend again, incapable of pinpointing the exact moment it had happened? But the idea of falling in love with him seemed ridiculous. After the lunchtime rush and completing more of the task her papa had underlined as necessary on her daily task list, she was pleased to receive a FaceTime call with her parents. Sweetheart, you should have seen their faces. When they announced we were through to the semi-final, they were not happy. You could have toasted brioche off their faces. Marinette smiled as her papa darted on and off the screen as he reenacted the scene for her whilst her mum held the phone. I'm so happy for you both. It sounds amazing. So when is the semi-final taking place? In a couple more days. Which means if we get... You mean when? The final isn't for another week. We hadn't planned on taking this much time away from the bakery. Supreme angled the phone slightly so that her daughter could clearly see the concern on her face. It's fine. I'm fine. Enjoy this moment. You deserve it. But, my honey, you are looking tired. Thanks a lot. Marinette tried to fake a joking voice. If she told her parents what was happening, they would be on the next train back, and there was no way she would allow this drama, what this was, to take away from her parents' achievements. If the bakery is getting too much, say and we'll come back, her papa added in from the background. No, it's fine. Like I said, did some sewing last night and fell asleep at my desk again. That is all. She definitely was not on some strange date with a half-cat, half-human man whom she had no idea what his name was. But he did save her from the Howlers, another element of the story I haven't told you about. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. If you are sure, sweetheart. Maybe if the shop is quiet, shut up early. If there's no more orders to fulfill at the present, get some rest. And not so. Both parents peered at her through the screen, grateful they couldn't hear her heart pounding. Yes. Thank you, and yes, you are right. A nap right now sounds amazing. Right after she dropped by the fabric store, that is. Her parents signed off and Marinette instantly locked the front door. It was an hour earlier than she was meant to, but the few customers she might have didn't come close to the desire to plough her thoughts into design and crafting. The white noise to the constant bombardment of theories on endless loop bouncing around in her head. She ambled back up the stairs to the apartment to grab her purse when an idea formed inside her head. Her photos. She had filed them away, or more like shoved them inside a shoebox along with other mementos she had kept since her high school days. Okay, she could spare herself a few minutes to test out her theory. Kitty had filled some of the gaps, signaled that he knew her, which meant they had gone to high school together. There hadn't been a lot of additional events happening then, pretty much school, bakery and sewing, with the added element of pity as she was tagged along on a few of her friend dates for ice cream or the movies. But since the end of school, things had shifted to only being bakery and sewing. The past year had been even worse, shutting herself off completely, forming a bubble around herself that no one could penetrate. All except Kitty. Somehow being around him had felt right, sensing her tight grip relaxing slightly. Then why did she run from him last night when he had finally confirmed to her? Well, not directly, but she had felt it. He had been the one who had wrapped his arms around her, making her feel safe, loved, cherished. She didn't mean to hurt him, to run away like that. She closed her eyes only to see Felix's face. No, his features, but not his eyes. They belonged to another, but who? She yanked out the box, grabbed at the lid, and was pleased to see the pile resting underneath random items. Some made sense. Play invites she could remember making the costumes for. Ali and Nino's birthday messages on a generic card. There was another one, but it was blank inside. Nate and Mark's first comic they made together. The certificate for winning her first design competition. There was a dried red rose placed in some form of glass display case. Who and why she had this? She couldn't recall. There was a movie stub, but from a film she had seen by herself, but still ended up being one of her favourite feel-good films. There was even the beaded bracelet thing she had discovered on her desk a year ago, of blue and golden yellow, with a red string running through. She had guessed at the time it'd been a last-minute gift idea or something from her school days, but couldn't recall who it was for. Her hand went straight to the photos, pulling them out. She couldn't help but smile at the goofy grin on her friends' faces until then she found some by herself, holding an ice cream, or grinning with glee alone on the Lovelock Bridge, or simply asleep on the train with no one else around. Why? Why did she have these random pictures, or taken in the first place? She darted her focus back to the pictures with her friends in them and noticed a gap in each of them, where Kitty should be. She stood to her feet, the photos cascading down to the floor, and dashed to her desk. There it was, the gap in the picture, or how they were standing to one side in the frame, as if someone else should have been there too. They dropped out of her hand as she raced up the ladder to the pinboard still next to her bed. 2 of them were pictures of her favourite cityscapes of Paris, but what if they had been a single picture of Kitty by himself? No, that isn't possible, was it? Oh, she couldn't breathe. The world was spinning around her as reality shifted again under her feet. She reached for a skylight and pushed it open, leveling herself up to the crisp air. Was it conceivable? To have a magic that was powerful enough not only to transform a man into a cat, but take him away from existing? She was finally ready to hear some answers, and there was only one person who could help her. Thank you for listening to chapter 8. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you smash the like button down below. Comment what you think of it and what will happen next. And make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on chapter 9, which will be coming very soon. Yeah, it's just busy and way behind at the moment. But chapter 9 will be coming soon. So make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on that and other series and other one-shots to come. And I hope you are good, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.